kick us off?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ananda, and I'm an Intel retiree, and I live in Beaverton near Fred Walker Road. Thank you.
Perfect. Michael Hashizume.
Hey everyone, Michael Hashizume here, recorder for the BAC, lifelong Beaverton resident, and been on the BAC since 2018, I think.
Perfect. John?
Hi, my name's John Vogler, and hello everybody. I'm resident of Beaverton and Southwest Beaverton in the Murray Hill area, and been on the Bicycle Advisory Committee for 1 year.
Perfect. Amy, tell us what's happening with school.
Oh, that's quite complicated right now. But, yeah, things are working out there all right. But I'm the youth liaison from MYAB, and I live in the Five Oaks, Triple Creek area.
And Councilor Hasan?
Hey everyone, Nadia Hasan or Councilor Hasan. I live in Five Oaks, Triple Creek as well, right off of Walker by Fred Meyer.
Perfect. Amanda.
Amanda Koppel. I'm currently the vice chair of the BAC, and I live kind of by Nike on Mulligan Way.
Cool. And Nathaniel?
My name is Nathaniel May. I am a freshly minted alternate, and I live in South Beaverton, just north of the Tigard border.
Neat. And Kate?
Hi, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Kate McQuillan. I'm a senior planner within the planning division, though I am a transportation planner, and just looking forward to talking with you guys more later.
Sounds good. We appreciate it. Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie, and I am an alternate as of the beginning of this year, and I live in the Tannisbourne area in officially unincorporated Washington County, but my address says Beaverton. It's complicated. I bike everywhere.
Wonderful. Kara?
Hi, I'm Kara. I live in central Beaverton, and I have been on the committee for 1 year.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Ahearn. I've been on the committee, I guess this is my second year. I live in Portland, but I do work in Beaverton. I've worked in downtown Beaverton for a few years now.
Perfect. And I'm Mike Mulligan. I'm the chair of the committee, I think about 11 years. I live in Southwest Beaverton, and welcome everybody to the meeting. So should we share our February minutes? Just people can take a quick look if you haven't had a chance to look at them, and then we can get those approved and on our way. And thank you again, Michael, for doing such a good job and with these. And
thank you.
Concise yet thorough. Perfect. So does anybody have any corrections, any additions, anything that needs to be changed at all for our minutes? Hearing none, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the February minutes, why don't you just raise a hand? Amanda, and then I have a second.
Looks like Ananda's got his hand up.
Ananda, okay, I see it now. All right, everybody that's in favor, why don't you unmute and say aye? Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any nays? And I think everybody was here February, that's
there.
present today.
I wasn't there. I'll abstain.
Okay, sorry. All right, they are approved. Perfect. So Maggie, is anybody joined from the public?
Yes, there's now one attendee.
All right, well, why don't we open it up if want either through chat, any comments, any questions, things we want to share with the committee. This would be a great time to do that. Okay, well, all right. Thanks so much, Ian. If any questions come up or any point during the meeting, just please chime in. Be happy to bring you into the discussion. All right, that moves us along. Councilor Hasan, what's been going on with the council?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mike. I'm sure that you don't spend Tuesday nights like myself from 6:30 until whatever time we go to talk about city council. So I'll try to give you a quick recap. One of the big things that we're talking about right now is the hiring of the city manager. As you know, we are in an interim city manager. We've hired an interim city manager to help us through the transition to a council manager form of government, and our new sort of head of our city will be the city manager. So I just am dropping this in the chat. It's the website that talks about the city manager. There is an application if you would like to be a city manager, you can apply. If not, there is also a survey. That's more what I would think for you all, which is any feedback that you want to share with us so that we should be thinking, that we can be thinking about. It's my understanding we've got a ton of applications because Beaverton is kind of a great place. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about candidates who we're going to hire, and to help you understand the form of government. The city manager reports to the city council. And so the city council directs the city manager, and then the city manager directs City of Beaverton staff, which is a really big shift because we used to be a mayor. The mayor directed staff, and now the city manager will be directing staff. 2 nights ago, we dug a little deep into some of our priorities as counselors, just very general and high level. The budget season is coming up. There will be budget meetings happening in May, at which point we approve of the budget. Because of this new form of government, in an ideal world, we have council priorities. We know where council wants to go, and that helps inform budget, and then budget is impacted. Because of this shift that happened last month, or in December, January, where we just switched from the mayor telling city staff what to do to the city manager telling staff what to do, there's been this kind of backlog of, okay, city manager needs to collect from city council, and then they need to inform the staff. So we're kind of working through that. It's going to look a little clunky this year, if I'm being super honest. I can't wait until next year when we're able to actually define our priorities as counselors and then help the budget inform that. And then that kind of will hopefully be a little bit more seamless. I'm happy to answer any specific questions if you have any. And one thing I just want to share is, you know, we always get public comment from different people. If you ever feel like there's something that you want to share with us, the good, the bad, the ugly, know that public comment is a great way to tell us how you're feeling. The other group that I liaison with will always email me directly, and I'm always like, you should send this to all, you know, it's okay to share information and or things that you want us to know on City Council. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Any questions at this time for Councilor Hasan? Well, feel free to continue and hang into the meeting. If questions come up or things you want to chime in from the council perspective, definitely please do that.
Thanks.
We're cruising right along. It's time to
We
put
are.
on the thinking caps and go into class 101.
Okay, but you know what, Mike? I'm going to make you all wait a little bit.
Okay.
Kate is here, but Anna is not, and I've just texted her. So I'm
Okay.
assuming she's probably with her family in the moment because she thought she had a little more time. So let's move to another item, and then when Anna gets here, we'll just flex things around.
Okay.
How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Should we visit
Let's do
the
that.
Beaverton Bike Map update?
I think so.
Okay.
I wanted to bring this to all of you as a topic and just to touch on it tonight and get your sort of maybe initial ideas, but maybe come back next month and do a little bit more of a deeper dive on this. So here's our Beaverton Bike Map, and this is you all. You've received this in the mail from me, or it's about to land in your mailbox if you haven't gotten it yet. But this is a map. I want to say it's probably, I'm gonna look at Mike, 5-ish years old. I feel like it's been a little while since we last updated this. But this is the printed version. It's on actually a really nice paper that's good for like putting it in your bike bag. It's a little bit sturdier and a little more weatherproof. And the same map is actually it's available on our website, and it unfolds, and it's hard to unfold and see it all on Zoom. But I shared with the map, the Beaverton part of the map, with all of you, the link online. But what's nice about this map is the one side is just all of Beaverton, and the streets, as we know, we have Washington County kind of in surrounding Beaverton in interesting ways. So we have those streets as well. And then the back side is the regional bike routes map. So a little bit bigger picture of the west side, kind of to the Willamette River. So it goes to downtown Portland and the edges of the Willamette, and then goes as far out as Hillsborough and Cooper Mountain. There's a little inset in the bottom of central Beaverton, right? And then there's this panel on the side that has sort of bike safety tips. And then the sort of the backside, when it's all folded up, are sort of key important phone numbers. So I kind of like I'm doing this on Zoom, holding up a giant map. But we have money in our budget to update the map, which for us, I think is really just for the streets that have been improved, the bike facilities that have been added since we last printed this. Places like South Cooper Mountain that on this map don't have nearly all the new streets that have been built there, right? So there've been some incremental changes to this. So, we have enough to print somewhere between like around 5,000 to 7,000 maps. We use these maps at events. We have shared them with bike shops. We've made them accessible to the public, in all sorts of places, library. They're really a great resource for the city, and really all of you as bike advisory community, when we think sort of about outreach activities. Just to share, to help promote cycling in Beaverton. So what I wanted to at least make you aware of this, that we're going to be updating the map, and I'll be working with our graphics team and our GIS team to do the updates themselves. But I welcome your input on really sort of, I'm looking for kind of are there things that are missing on this map that are like important things for you as cyclists? And one of the things I thought about, John, you'll like this, is this a place do we want to put bike tool stations on here, at least the publicly accessible ones, right? Because we've talked about that as a group. That would be a nice feature to have. I think there's also been some updates to paths and trails that may have occurred here, some multi-use paths, so we want to make sure that those are correct. And then I'm also curious, I want to hear, and we can have a conversation on this next time, but really is this sort of bike safety panel that's on the map. Is this the information that we want to continue to have in here? Is there something else that we'd want to put in here? And the same thing as well for here in terms of the panel with the phone numbers. Is this, are these sort of the right resources to point people to? Is there something missing? Are there things to take out? So those are my thoughts on that. I welcome, thoughts that you might have tonight that you want to share. Let's do that. And as I said, we'll have some more time, and I'll be ready to come with more information next month. And any initial thoughts?
I have a few.
Oh, okay.
The tips in bike laws, the Idaho stop, or the new stop, yield a stop, whatever it is.
Yes.
Stop is yield.
Do people know what that is, Caitlin? Who wants to explain that? Does everybody know what the Idaho stop is?
Yeah.
No, maybe not, kinda.
My
Okay, you all just
understanding
froze for a little bit. Yeah.
is that as you approach a controlled intersection with a stop sign, like a four-way stop, you're slowing to a speed where you're able to assess whether there is traffic present or crossing, and if there is no traffic, then you can proceed safely through the intersection without coming to a complete stop. Am I correct?
I think that's a good description of it, yeah.
And to clarify, a complete stop technically on a bike is you do put a foot on the street.
Right.
Okay, that's a great suggestion.
There's a use
on the back.
for that.
I don't know if you're gonna, I assume you're gonna update like the links and stuff.
Yes.
Sorry if you can hear my roommates. So the drive less, save more is get there now, what you know.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. These, we have a WTA has a new phone number. So that phone number,
Okay.
and also that logo is very old. This,
yes, it is.
That's old. This one's old. That one's old. And also like
okay, update logos.
Yeah,
okay.
A bit of sort of general feedback on like the online version that I found. So at the bottom of this, it says beavertonoregon.gov/bike, which actually takes you to the Bicycle Advisory Committee
page. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and even if you click on like bicycle resources on the left-hand side, the map isn't there. And you have to go to like the printable maps page. So it's just kind of hard to find because it's like printable maps and then like commuter maps, and it's called like bike group map bike. So it's like, it just could be easier to find.
Buried. Okay.
Yep.
No, that's great. That's helpful.
That's what I got.
All right. Well,
I didn't look closely, but I think things like Mulligan Way now have, with the Sharrows, so that, or we have some of our other wayfinding or things
some
of
of
that.
the other, some of the capital projects that we've built. Mm-hmm.
And would we think of this, is there a way like building it into an app that people could download potentially onto a phone to be able to access it that way if they didn't have the map? Or
well, I can find out about that. I like the idea. I think it's a big, like the PDF file, right? That that I sent you that link to, is a big file. So I'd be curious to see if there is a way to make it more manageable, sort of a quick download for phone, or there's other, and the thing is there's also things like Google Maps now has a lot of information. So how does it compare to that? Or I think that would be a great idea to explore, just to see like what can we do with our map in another format.
Yeah, how people want to try to access it or use it. Since this is printed, I think people have gone even more so towards the smartphones and what we're doing with that. So might be interesting. But I could see potentially us going out, maybe riding some of these and giving some feedback on the way the roads are rated, the way are they still is that accurate as far as low traffic and getting opinions on that front, things of that nature.
Great.
John?
Okay.
Jane, I've got a couple of suggestions for changing the map. The Walnut Street down in Tigard is much improved. They've kind of rebuilt the road. They've got a nice bike lane on both sides. And it's currently shown as a caution area, but it's really a good throughway. So we might want to, maybe Tigard should weigh in here, but in my opinion.
And John, just it's Walnut Street that I think you're seeing, that you're talking about. You said Walnut?
Yes, Southwest Walnut.
Yeah, okay.
Street. Yeah,
Okay.
down there where it runs into Thomas Fowler Middle School. You know, it's nice now. It's got, they tore out the whole street and put in curbs. The other area, similarly, Southwest Shoals Ferry, you know, over the big hill down there where Teal Boulevard is, that's all been redone. And it's got a nice bike lane on both sides. And there's still high-speed traffic there, but it's a lot better than it was.
Okay.
Those would be two suggestions.
Okay.
Thanks, John. And one of my interesting things, Gene, would be what were the criterias when we were establishing what those roads were as far as low traffic, multi-use, caution? What was it based on? Speed? Was it based on traffic counts, or what was the existing road treatments, things of that nature? It might be neat just to be able to look at.
Right. Yeah, it'd be good to have a definition. I don't know if I've seen that definition, but I will see what I can find out. Otherwise, we will have to deduce based on what we know today about the street. So yeah, I will see what I can find out to get some definitions that we can weigh in on. And I think, yeah, I think like John was saying, as you look through this map and you think about the routes that you travel, like John was saying, if there's a route that's marked here as a caution area, that something's changed and you feel differently, feel free to email me after, before our next meeting, because I think just having that list to help go back and confirm will be helpful. So spend time with the map and let me know what you think. Yeah.
Do the multi-use paths take into consideration whether bikes can be ridden on them or whether bikes need to be walked on them? Because I can tell you, in fact, some of the multi-use path I see is, in preserve or part of park, and they have signs saying that you need to walk your bike if you're going to use them.
I will say I have noticed there's a couple here that to me are not multi-use paths in a definition that they're rideable. And I think that's something we need to kind of scan through the map and inventory. I don't think they belong there. And yet there is something about a trail, like maybe there's a way we can differentiate those so that they are still connections, they're walkable, and maybe it becomes something that's hatched like cautionary. Maybe it's a, trail that you must walk upon. Maybe there's a way to annotate those. Because if they're important connections, if they help kind of fill a gap, I wouldn't want to necessarily lose those. But I also want to honor facilities that are really, they're meant to be a walking facility and not a place to ride. Because we don't also want to have something that points people to a facility thinking they can ride, and then they get there and then they have a choice to make about, about what they're going to do. So I think better that our maps kind of more accurately reflect really those kind of true distinction of a facility you can bike on. So if you have specific places where you know where they are, I would love that. Just an email with that, that'd be great.
And I think that goes along with the comment that Ian was making hear about the older multi-use trails and ones that don't have curb cuts for the road crossings.
So I have two comments.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we make this map more user friendly? Like what I mean is like the spring water corridor or like the Vernonia banks. So if you can mark with a different color, a loop, then it will be very helpful for bikers to go on a loop. So then they don't have to think, they just take that loop, go for the full loop and come back. So can we make this map more user friendly by identifying some special loops?
Oh, as a
Like a spring-
different addition or something like to
Exactly.
show
Yeah.
routes or show routes that you could take as
Correct.
as an encouragement sort of piece of it. Here's some. Yeah,
Correct.
got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I like
for
that.
example-
I mean, we have a whole bunch of space, and I think we have an opportunity to decide what we want to put on it.
Correct.
So I think that's worth talking about. Yeah.
The Powerland trail is an ideal example. We can go from Tiger all the way to Germantown. There's a one trail, so we can mark it specifically. It'll be very nice. Just for an example.
Yeah.
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 I think that's good.
And
Great.
another comment was, can we help in identifying you any faults in the map? Because you said you are going to update the map. So only when you update the map, then only we can go actually on the route and identify whether there is any issues or not. So is that a possibility? Would you like that?
Oh, if there's routes that you take, I'm not asking this group to go, cycle every mile of Beaverton. That would be a heroic effort. We do have a lot of information already mapped and in our system, and there's other people that will be weighing in on this from transportation side of things. That said, if there's a route that you know well, and you have some other opinion on it, or you just want to make sure, Jean, did you capture this new bike lane that got put in or something? Feel free to email me those. But I do like the idea of the loops, or whatever we'll call them, scenic rides, places to explore in Beaverton. I think that will make this a little more
attractive.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something like the
Did I
low-
answer that second question?
Sure, yeah.
Say that again. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I had one little piece of feedback. I'm sort of conflicted with some of the visual coding on this map, with sort of the cooler colors, I think, being used to indicate like these are much safer, easier routes to take. But a lot of them are on high-speed arterials, and like in particular, like TV Highway or Farmington, high-speed vehicle traffic with unbuffered or unprotected bike lanes. When I sort of think of handing this out to sort of an everyday Beaverton resident, to me, the sort of green and blue indicates like these are very user-friendly routes you could take and jump on and like maybe take your family with. But I would not say like go on TV Highway to have a nice family ride or anything like that. So I'm not sure how to sort of like make that distinction visually, because yes, these roads have bike lanes, but no, I'm not sure I would say this is a good kind of first ride to take.
I agree, and that's really great feedback. I have seen, and I'll have to look for them if I have them here at home. I have seen, I think it is Portland that has done sort of your traditional bike map like this. And then there's a family-friendly map that gets more at what you're talking about, that has that different lens of a rider's skill. So I like that idea, and let me kind of explore that a bit over the next few weeks, because I think that is key. Yeah, just looking at it, TV Highway, it might have bike lanes, but you're next to really fast-moving traffic, and that is really not comfortable. So, okay. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Jean, I have a question.
Yeah.
what about, so we mentioned the Idaho stop. What about a situation where traffic lights are not triggered by bicycles and bicycles get stuck there for a long amount of time? I know at one point I knew where to send that information, who to contact. And I think there's also a rule that says, and I don't remember exactly what it says, but that after, you know, a certain number of signal changes, you're allowed to go through a red light because it's clearly not responding to the bicycle. You know, if it's like a Sunday morning and there aren't any cars to come up behind you and kind of trigger that signal. So is there a place to put that information on who to contact and what the rule is?
Okay, let's add it to the list. That is a big, long, and complicated thing.
Yeah.
That has an element of risk, but I get kind of the need to communicate that. So yeah, we have.
Right.
Okay, we have road hazards. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna agree with that, the stoplight thing, knowing which ones are triggered or not. And in general, on the Portland one, they say they have like, if there's a stoplight along a route, there's like little symbols for like where there's a traffic signal, which is really helpful if you're trying to cross like a busy street, like knowing where the like stoplights are, so you're not trying to like, you know, run across a 4-lane highway without like a light. So
yeah, great. Okay.
Good idea. Well, and also, Gina, could that put on it a link to our report a problem map that's on the BAC or on the city website, where that's where people can report where there's an issue with lights that aren't responding.
Or really any others. Okay.
All right.
I travel a bunch or traveled a bunch for work, and hopefully will travel for work again in the future. And every time I travel, I rent a bike in whatever town or city I'm visiting. And the first place I go is that city's website looking for any bicycle resources. And the thing that I'm specifically looking for is exactly what Ananda was asking for, which is routes that are commonly ridden by cyclists in the area. Because when I look at a map, like our cycling map, I'm like, okay, well, these are arterials and these are clearly places I should avoid, but what's like a route that local cyclists ride? And I love the idea of a family-friendly bike map, because even me as an experienced cyclist in a new town, I would probably want, like, what's the 10-mile family loop in this area that I can ride comfortably, because I'm already not familiar with this area and now I'm riding a bike and I don't really know the bike culture of this city. So what's that going to look like for me? That would be a super valuable resource, I think, both for locals and visitors.
Great idea. Any final thoughts? Look at that. We filled up our time. Anna is here. We're back on our agenda. Fantastic.
All right.
Wow, great guys. That's great feedback. Thank you all for all of that. I was not expecting a lot tonight, and I'm glad we had this little bit of extra time. So thanks.
Perfect. All right. Should we now begin with Transportation Planning 101? Will this affect our final grade?
Yes, it will affect your final grade. Anna, were you going to share the slides? Did we figure this out? Are you ready to share slides?
I'm happy to, Jean. You made an edit, I think, on the OneDrive document. I just want to make sure that the one I have is the one that has your edit.
You'll see words on that one slide, on the active transportation slide. If you see words there, you've got the right one.
If I see words there. All right, hang on a second here.
All right.
Oh, wait.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And I apologize for My tardiness, I got the meeting start time wrong. But here I am.
Okay.
And here's our
You're
presentation.
here. All right, great. Thank you, Anna. Okay. So thanks everyone for letting us bring this topic to you tonight. I have been chatting with Kate and Anna about sort of I staff Bicycle Advisory Committee, Anna staffs the Planning Commission, and this is a topic that we actually are bringing to both of your groups, and really wanted to give you all sort of a good foundation in transportation planning and policy, to give you some context of the sort of the universe that we operate in our work days, because of how it does affect the decisions that we're making related to bicycling, but even walking and transit and sort of traveling public, even people driving in cars, and truck delivery. So, you know, we spend our days kind of thinking about the whole system. And what I had realized, and was actually in talking with Ananda, and just sort of my onboarding of him, we had a conversation. I realized, oh, there's actually a lot of information that many of you may not have encountered yet in your role. Many of you are new to this committee, or newish. And we thought would be really helpful to share, kind of give us sort of a foundational level overview of transportation planning, so that you know a little bit more. And as we continue to work on other projects, and both city projects, but projects by our neighboring jurisdictions and partners, that you've got a little bit more background. And as we continue to move forward on other planning type work, again, you have some common language to share and knowledge. So let's go to the next slide. We have a fun thing for you next. There we go. I was going to change the slide.
Hold on.
Maybe. Is it working?
I'm trying. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it.
Okay. So this is something we want you to all use the chat rather than go around. How old were you when you learned to ride a bike? I thought this would be a fun way to kind of kick us all off. If you can remember that far back. So I'm going to open up the chat and see. Maybe 8-ish, Nadia. 5. Great, Amy. I remember mine by what grade I was in. Isn't that funny? I see a lot of 4s and 5s, some 7s, 6, lots of 4s and 5s. Great. Depends on what type of bike. Yes. Was it a big wheel? Was it a tricycle? Training wheels? Not training wheels. Right. When did you graduate? Oh, Annie, too old to remember. That's okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for chiming in on our little question. It's also another fun way just to get to know each other. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so before we dive in too much, maybe we'll just introduce ourselves. And we did a very little bit at the beginning, but we also wanted to give you a little more context about some of the work that we do. So some of you have heard me say this, but I'm our Transportation Planning Division Manager. And my team, the work that I do is primarily focused in 3 areas. So one is transportation planning and policy. So you're going to hear more about sort of the plan documents that are key to that work, but really kind of thinking long-term, thinking strategically for the city, thinking about our city goals. And there's a sort of a legal context that those plans and policies reside in. And that's a key part of our work. Another key piece of our work is on delivering capital projects. So my team, we're leading several major capital projects in the downtown. If you remember hearing about the Beaverton Downtown Loop and Dan Turk, he works on my team. So we're the team that is doing projects at their very early stages, doing that planning work, seeing them through design and then construction. And we do that work in partnership with our engineering and public works staff, as well as other departments within the city, to essentially build new sidewalks, bike lanes, roadways, all those sorts of capital investments that we continue to build to improve the city and really build that transportation network. I like to think of the work that we're doing is on cycling is really about building a bicycle network. It's not just sort of one project at a time, but how they all interconnect. And then the third piece of sort of my work is what I call regional coordination. That's where I spend quite a bit of my time meeting and coordinating with our local agency partners, whether it be our neighboring cities within Washington County itself, and then within the metropolitan region, Metro, our regional government, they're the organizing group really for all of the cities within the 3-county region of Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas counties. So there we're looking at regional policy. We have a regional transportation plan, as well as coordinating around the federal funding that comes to the region through Metro. That is another source of funding for our transportation investment. So I'll stop there, but that's a good sort of overview of the work I do. And I get to staff this great committee and get to work with all of you. So Anna, why don't you tell us about who you are?
Sure. So my name's Anna Slatinsky. I'm the planning division manager within the community development department. So Jean and I are colleagues in community development. And I manage the current planning and the long range planning teams. The current planning team is primarily responsible for reviewing land use applications. So if there is a development project that needs a land use approval, or if there's a particular use or a property division, I work with the team that processes those applications and applies the development code regulations. So this is the first leg in the 3-part development process in Beaverton. The land use is the first stop. The second stop is site development, where folks do the engineering work for public and private improvements that are kind of about the site and the ground and the transportation, the utilities. And then finally, folks go to building. And in the building division, that's where you get your permit for building your actual structures. So we all work closely together, but they are 3 kind of distinct permitting processes. And I also work with the long range planning team. And the long range team is responsible for working with the comprehensive plan, doing research and analysis, doing district plans, generally that longer range policy work. And in general, it's very interdisciplinary. So Jean's team specializes in transportation, but transportation connects with so many aspects of city governance and of city life. Likewise, other aspects of planning include land use, sustainability. It includes the physical dimensions of things being built, but it also includes things like, is there space to provide services like education? Where should people live? Where can they work? How do all of these things need to be considered in a comprehensive way in order for the city to make good decisions? And how is all of that really informed by community aspirations and concerns? So it's sitting here that the images are from the Beaverton Community Vision document, which is kind of that big picture touchstone that city staff look to help guide our work in general terms and sometimes with very specific initiatives. So that in a nutshell is my role. As Jean said, I'm also the staff liaison for the Planning Commission, which is a volunteer board and commission, just like you guys, except they are tasked with making land use decisions for specific types of land use applications in Beaverton. So they have to actually apply transportation rules through their decisions, and they're informed by the transportation engineers on Beaverton staff, but also by the analysis that's required of some land use applications.
Kate, you want to introduce yourself?
So like I said, I'm Kate McQuillan. So I'm a senior planner. I work in the planning division, so I work on Anna's team. And while I technically, my position is in the long range planning program, I get to work with everyone. So I've been doing a lot of current planning, so supporting development review. And I should add, I'm the only transportation planner within the planning division, which is really fun. So I get to do a lot of work with engineers and site development, with Jean's group, sometimes Public Works. We have staff in a development division who does part of our urban renewal agency, and they're helping bring businesses to the city. So trying to problem solve and make those projects work. They always have some big transportation impacts. And also working on some of the long range planning work as well. So I'm just here to provide my expertise. I've been a transportation planner for about 10 years now, and just happy to share with you what I know. You guys are my people. We get to nerd out on this stuff all the time. So I'm just happy to be here.
Great, thanks, Kate. So as I said, we wanted to give you this foundation and have this be sort of a starting point for you all to understand how the city as a public agency handles transportation. Kate is going to tell you all a little bit more about some of the sort of foundational transportation plans and policies at the city. And then we also are going to give you a little bit of a high-level overview of how state and regional policies affect Beaverton transportation. As Anna said, that Beaverton Community Vision really is kind of a guiding document for all the work that we're doing. So let's go to the next slide. Here's a very rudimentary, we laughed about this a little bit, very rudimentary org chart. This is not an official org chart, but just to give you a sense of how within the city, across all of our city departments, as you can see, nearly all of them affect transportation in some way, but we're going to focus on the two primary agency departments that provide the core transportation related facilities within the city. So that's the Community Development Department. That's where Anna and Kate and I all work, and Public Works. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So the Community Development Department, it's made up of several work divisions. I think you all heard probably all of us talk about how we work collaboratively together, and really we're here really building a vibrant and equitable community. So within community development, there's the building division, the development division, economic development division, planning, site development, transportation planning, and then also code compliance, which is newly come over to community development from Beaverton Police Department just this year. So CDD staff, including our director, also support Beaverton's Urban Redevelopment Agency. So within Beaverton, the staff within CDD support, BURA is what we call them, the Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency. And that work is actually funding quite a number of other efforts. So we wanted to, you heard us talk a little bit about long range planning and land use and development review, as well as BURA. So let's go to the next slide. So that's CDD. Public Works. So Public Works, those are our colleagues that actually, they are both responsible for the operations of the system. So everything from sewers and street maintenance, signing, striping, signals, street lighting, our water infrastructure, our team that's out in the field, and operating the system from behind the scenes, and then engineering services. That's our staff that's focused on designing and delivering capital projects, so putting in new infrastructure, as well as just sort of overall sort of transportation engineering and management of the system. Operations and engineering work pretty closely together. So, okay, I think it looks like Michael has raised a hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, this may be a silly question, but have never quite understood the difference between a transportation engineer and a transportation planner. And I know they're very different things. I know they're siloed into two very different departments, but I could not tell you how they're different. Could you give a very high level overview of the difference there?
Sure, I will try, and then I'm going to let Anna and Kate chime in too. So a transportation engineer, they are someone who is a registered professional engineer, typically. They are trained in civil engineering, in the design of streets, sidewalks, roads, sewer, water. There's sort of the physical side of infrastructure, and then there's another side of transportation engineering that's focused on the operations of the system. So think signal timing, think the way that the lanes are laid out, the dimensions of the lanes, the placement of lanes. And there's a certain amount of analysis that comes with all of that. So some of it's related to sort of physical building of things and designing them to meet the, whether it be structural needs or capacity needs. And then there's sort of the operational side of transportation engineering. And, you know, they work with models, they work with data, they work with traffic counts, things like that. I'm gonna let the planners, how did I do on that description? Are our friends gonna like say I did okay tomorrow? Okay, I'm gonna let Anna or Kate describe what a planner does.
I'm gonna let Kate describe what she does, since she's a transportation planner and I'm not a transportation planner.
Generally, the way I think about it is planners are always going to have the long game and the long vision in mind, even if it's, and so this is from the policy level primarily, but if we're doing even the current planning, so this means like people who come in for land use applications, you know, and we're reviewing how the project fits within the existing codes and the existing policies, we always have the long vision, the big picture in mind. So we'll think about a whole network in addition to a site specific. And then engineers could be a bit more like site focused. They've got the design, that expertise. And then there's always the plan engineer, which is the person who can interface. That's my career goal, is to become a plan engineer. So I could be a planner and engineer. So I can talk with them both equally.
Great. And, you know, I'll add one thing here, and I'm not sure if it comes up later in our show, but one of the things too that our engineering division is responsible for is the city's capital improvement plan or program, which is the it's both a long-term look at city transportation, water, sewer investments, and it's a program that's updated annually, and that gets reflected into our budget. So the decisions that we're making about which projects are moving forward and how they're budgeted and funded, and how they're really prioritized and selected is another piece of what kind of goes into the transportation picture here. So, any other questions before we move on? Okay, I think this is where I hand you off to Kate.
And Michael, I'm glad that you asked. There are no dumb questions. If at all, it sounds like I'm making assumptions that you know stuff that maybe you haven't encountered yet, or if I'm using jargon, which I'm guilty of, please call me out. You can interrupt me or raise your hand. So no dumb questions. So what I want to touch on, this is one of my favorite graphics to talk about transportation and land use planning in the state of Oregon specifically. Oregon's pretty unique in how many layers there are to land use and transportation planning. It's also kind of noteworthy how Oregon really sees land use and transportation as truly integrated. So there's a lot of rules and regulations from the state that acknowledge this relationship, and there's reasons why we have to do certain things with transportation system plans and other things like that, acknowledging how land use and transportation are really closely linked. So in Oregon, I just quickly want to mention, we have 19 statewide planning goals. That's pretty unique. Those planning goals often have administrative rules, so laws that agencies have to comply with to make sure that these are all implemented. And so there's a transportation planning rule. If you hear me say TPR, that's what I'm referring to. So that's the administrative rules that implement the transportation goal. I could spend hours talking to TPR. I'm not going to do that tonight, but just know there's a lot of requirements for local agencies like cities within the TPR. And then there's also plans at the statewide level. And you'll see there's a theme here. There's going to be plans at the state level, plans at the regional level, and plans at the city level. And they all have to be consistent. That's kind of part of a characteristic of planning in Oregon. Councilor Hasan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. I don't know if y'all have, like, as a group looked at this map, but there's like this joke that it looks like a grated cheese, the city of Beaverton. Like, you'll see, right, like parts of Beaverton that are not Beaverton but are Beaverton, and just I've always found that to be really amazing. And I've also learned many people don't understand that, so I just wanted to call it out, because like that white space, if you're wondering, is like kind of the Nike campus area, and there's some neighborhoods and homes around there which are technically not considered Beaverton.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for pointing that out. And we'll kind of get to it towards the end too. We've got a cool mapping feature we want to show you about. Some of the Swiss cheeseness of the boundaries kind of can affect a little bit of roadway jurisdiction, who has the authority of it, meaning which government agency. Not always, but that comes into play. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, I'll move on to the regional. So the green outline, we have metro or regional governments. So similarly, they've got regional plans that are consistent with the state. And then we at the city, below that have to be consistent with those plans at all. So that's work that Jean mentioned. She has a lot of regional coordination that she does in her role. And then going down to the blue graphic there. So that's the city. At the city, we have what we call the comprehensive plan. That's our guiding vision from the land use perspective. One of the chapters in there is transportation. It's directly related to what we call the transportation system plan. So it's technically a separate plan, but very much related. So those are our guiding transportation policies that ultimately feed into development code, and how the development code requires certain requirements for private developments. And it's also foundational for things like functional class and all these different kinds of policies and standards that sounds wonky, but it actually has quite a big impact on how things are built and operated within the city, really any jurisdiction or city in Oregon. So that's the real high level of the layers of planning in Oregon. We can move on to the next slide. So again, transportation system plan. The content of the city's adopted transportation system plan, pretty well prescribed within the state's transportation planning rule, or the TPR, what has to be required. So a number of things that we must do. And then cities, and us included, we go a little bit above and beyond that too, right? It's got to be a functional document for the city and what we want to achieve. Typical things in a TSP that we have, you have to do an assessment of your road network. How well is it working from an operations or capacity or safety standpoint? You have to state where you want to be as a city. What are your performance measure goals? And then how are you going to achieve that? And so often what that looks like is the coveted project list in the TSP. So there has to be a list of projects, so identified improvements that the city is going to make or plans to make on certain segments of road to make it be safer or function better. So in the advocacy world, you might hear a lot of reference to, oh, well, that project's on the TSP project list. So that's what that's referencing there. And the TSP also includes the functional classification map. I briefly mentioned that. The TPR requires that we adopt that functional classification map in our TSP. So you'll find that there as well. And then lastly, the transportation system plan also includes the list of policies that guide our transportation vision. And so those policies within the TSP are what are directly plopped into and adopted into our comprehensive plan. Anna.
Kate, it just occurred to me that it's possible not everyone knows what the functional classification is.
Sure, thank you for calling that out. The map on the far right, I think it's on the right of the slide, with all the different colored lines. So perhaps you've heard references to a large arterial. Arterial is a functional class that means generally more lanes, faster traffic. So a functional classification is technically a policy designation for a roadway that tells us how we want the roadway to look and function. So for example, adopted street standards are based on functional class. So a city's adopted street standards on how to construct a road is going to look different for a local street. So imagine your smaller, low traffic in a residential area street versus TV highway. That's a ginormous arterial. And so functional class is really, it's, gosh, do we have like 4, 5, 6 different functional classifications? It's a hierarchy, but it's also a policy designation on how we want the roads to look and to operate and to function. Okay, I think I'm good on TSP. Again, TSP is something that I feel like we could spend 2 hours talking about. We wanted to acknowledge the active transportation plan. I've only been with the city for 1.5 years, but I get the impression that for folks on this committee who have been around for a little while, we're quite involved with the development of this plan, or at least providing some feedback. It sounds like this committee was quite involved. So the active transportation plan, this was adopted in early 2018. It's a long-range plan specifically for bicycle and pedestrian improvements throughout the city's street networks. There's recommendations in here on how to update the TSP, how to update development code, how to update comp plan, all these different things that would prioritize bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And there's a lot of data I noticed in that plan. It's quite fun to look through, lots of pretty maps. So the intent, and there's also some good design guidance in that document. It looks like there's a lot of time spent drafting up some policies and guidance on what streets could look like to be either the most comfortable or the safest facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians. So that was good timing. You can go back to the next slide. The capital improvement program. So this is a program that I believe it's housed within Public Works, but as Jean was mentioning, her group does a lot of liaison and coordinating on this. Capital Works, the way that I describe it is, it's how you take that project that's just a couple sentences on the TSP project list, and it's that program and process to how it actually gets constructed on the ground. So there's a very much a prioritization process internally that the city goes through. The capital improvement program includes a lot of assets and infrastructure at the city. So not just transportation, but there's going to be stormwater capital improvement programs. There's going to be drainage, or maybe it's going to be some signals, lighting improvements. So really it's going to be any sort of like physical hard infrastructure or asset that the city maintains. They're going to be prioritizing and tracking what improvements have to be made to the city. Generally, from the transportation perspective, the TSP project list is used as a starting point for these big transportation capital projects. Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, if a project's not on the TSP list, I don't think it precludes it from being in the CIP, but generally that's how it works.
Generally, that's how that works, yes. Okay. And I'll just say too, the TSP is meant to be a living document that can evolve over time as new plans and projects are adopted and by City Council and formalized. So yeah, great, good question.
And our engineering staff, they're also great project managers. So they as a team run through different design iteratives, design alternatives. Once you start opening up the streets and coming up with surveys and, looking into the as-built of what is actually in the ground. Plans can change. There's many iterations. It takes several years. They'll do the public involvement piece whenever there's a big project coming in. And so that's the project development phase. That's when our engineering team is working to go through the design alternatives and then put the project out for bid, which means we send it out, we get bids from contractors who could do the work. And then voila, we can start construction. Very long process from when a project is on a TSP to construction, but there's just a lot of checks and balances. I see a question from Mike. Can you remind us when the TSP will be next updated? I'll put to Jean.
Okay, I'll answer that. Yeah, Mike, so I think you might be remembering last year, maybe around this time-ish, it was in the spring that you had heard an update, a presentation on an update to the TSP. Last year, we went after a grant that would have provided the majority of the funding for that effort. We were not successful in getting that grant. And so over the next year, we're kind of doing a pivot and doing some work to actually incorporate the policies and goals that were identified in the active transportation plan, to put those into, formalize those into the TSP, as well as some of the other implementation actions that were identified in the active transportation plan. So it still needs to get done. Our TSP was last updated in 2010. It's still something we'd like to do. It's a big project. It's about a 2 or 3 year project and a very expensive project. So for now it's on hold, but we're going to be bringing forward and I can bring those items to share back with all of you to get your input, but we're going to be doing some sort of minor updates really to the TSP in the interim. So that answers your question. And while we're looking at questions, also John had a question. So John, do you want to say it? Should I read it out loud that you're asking about sort of other activities and plans happening? Do you want to go ahead and chime in?
Sure, I can read it out loud. There are so many groups working on bike plans at the city, county, metro, and other entities. For example, the Red Line group, Council Creek, Team, Salmonberry Trail. Do you interface with these folks? And if not, might it be a good idea to collaborate with these other groups to share project plans and ideas? How can we work together and lever each other?
Yeah, great. So we do coordinate with a lot of other jurisdictions, THPRD, particularly where they're connecting through Beaverton for sure, but then we're always looking at the larger picture too within Washington County. So we do interact with our neighboring jurisdictions, with Washington County, with Metro. I can't speak to like Salmonberry Trail in particular. I think Salmonberry Trail, maybe I think it starts outside the city boundary. It connects in through other trails. So there's connections there, but not directly within the city of Beaverton. But yeah, you know, Anna and I in particular, and another of our colleagues, you know, we're coordinating a lot on that. So the regional transportation plan and the coordinating function that Metro provides really is the key to how we all coordinate together. And on that list where you saw the state metro region, Beaverton, really there is a strong function there for Metro with the regional transportation plan. So all the jurisdictions within the Metro region, we submit our projects from our TSPs to flow into the regional transportation plan, where then those are prioritized even further, and that becomes a tool for how we allocate federal funding to the region and identify those major projects, whether they be transit, roadway, bike, sidewalk, trail. Those all sort of come in together in that way. I'm going to look at Anna or Kate. Did I miss anything?
Well, I would just add, since John, I think you were asking about some private or nonprofit organizations, not just government groups, but Metro has a number of committees that are set up to coordinate on particular topics, including transportation, and they do appoint members that represent nonprofits, the business community, and other advocacy organizations, as well as folks from cities, counties, and other public organizations. We really do look to Metro to help coordinate that regional conversation, because Metro has the formal role to plan transportation for the region.
If I could just follow up, the one project that's of real interest to me is this, I think it's called the Red Electric Line. And there's a group of people who are doing what they can to basically connect Barber all the way into like Beaverton and Piper. And there's a bridge that's been built. There was a recent write-up in the Bike Portland site about this. But here's a project that is going to run right into Beaverton. We should at least be tracking, like, what route do they have in mind? I know it comes in to Olison, but I think it ties into Shoals Ferry somehow. And it's just something that it seems to me like the Beaverton planners should be interfacing with this group in some way, just to be aware of the route and how we might support them in some way.
Okay, that's a really good point, John. Maybe you and I can follow up later, particularly about Red Electric. I know about Red Electric from when I was at City of Portland. So it's a great project, and it's that using that old real right of way to make that connection is pretty exciting. So yeah, great.
All right, I think that I feel pretty good about the capital improvement program or pipeline. I did want to touch briefly on the Beaverton Development Code. So this is going to be our section of code that implements the comprehensive plan. And so this really comes into play when there's private development. This could be like a smaller, tiny infill project. This also applies to the giant subdivisions coming into the South Cooper Mountain area. And the reason why I'm glad we're highlighting this tonight, private development makes substantial improvements to the transportation network through the private development pipeline. So oftentimes you'll see this picture here is an almost finished, maybe it's finished now, at 2nd and Lombard. And so they completed these beautiful wide sidewalks on the corner of 2nd and Lombard. There's extensive review from the transportation perspective when land use applications come in, just making sure that the adjacent transportation network meets our standards. And that includes roadway, travel lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, lighting, you name it. And so it's through the development code and through the process that implements the comp plan where we're able to require a private development to make improvements to the public transportation network. I think we're good on that slide. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to some partner agencies. As Councilor Hasan mentioned, we have our Swiss cheese boundaries at the city of Beaverton. Not to mention, there's a sometimes typical dynamic where the counties and areas can often have ownership or jurisdiction of some of the larger roadways, which is Washington County. And then the Oregon Department of Transportation maintains ownership and jurisdictional authority over highways. And so I think a lot of you know TV Highway. It looks like a big roadway, but it's got a state highway designation, and therefore the Oregon Department of Transportation has oversight over that roadway. And so sometimes it's a fun guessing game, even though we're well within city limits of, is this a county road? Is this a city road? Is this an ODOT road? And we do that internally. And so perfectly normal for anybody to wonder who the heck owns this road. So we're going to show you a cool tool in just a quick second that can help figure out who owns what as far as roadway go. And then also just want to give a quick shout out to other partners. We talked quite a bit about Metro tonight and that regional coordination role they play. So we work quite a bit with Metro. TriMet, that's our transit service provider for the region. They also, I believe they own or they have rights over the railway where the light rail and the West commuter line are. So they're often big players if there's any sorts of development or capital projects near those lines. And also Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec. So they're the city's parks district. And so they do some really great work with multi-use trails, some of our larger regional trails. So let's see, Anna, since you're driving, would you mind clicking on that link and seeing our map to figure out?
Is that popping up the map for you?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so you'll see on the legend on the far left, it says street maintenance. So you'll see street maintenance dash state, street maintenance dash county. So those are going to highlight which jurisdictions own certain roadways within the city of Beaverton. Oh, cool, you're zooming in. So the light blue, the very, very light blue is city of Beaverton. So you'll notice a lot of the dense network, smaller functional classification streets. So these, not these giant arterials generally, we still have giant arterials. But then you'll also notice, let's see, is Shoals Ferry highlighted? Okay, so you'll see Shoals Ferry is a different color. So Shoals Ferry is actually owned and maintained by Washington County. So that means capital projects, maintenance, that sorts of thing is generally going to be provided by Washington County. And sometimes they have different street standards in the city. So that's always a fun thing to do when there's any planned projects or land use applications on these roadways. So you all might find this tool super helpful. I know I refer to this map layer often.
And Anna, can you click on one of those street links just so you can see? You can also find out a little bit of info if you click on any one of those like lines. A little dialog box will pop up and it will tell you who it's maintained by. And then I think Anna, click on the arrow, like see how it's one of two. What does that tell us in this one? And it just tells you sort of where you're in particular city limits, or if you're in, say, in the area of unincorporated Washington County, it'll let you know that. So looks like Councilor Hasan, she put the link in the chat if you want to grab that. This map is also accessible if you go to the city's homepage and scroll down and look for near the bottom of the page is a big blue bar. And there's a place that says report a problem. And on that page is a place where you can tell us about any problem that you might possibly see. There, Anna's going to go to it. But what I love about this page is that there is the jurisdiction map in the top right corner-ish. And that takes you to the same map that Anna was just sharing with us. So if you forget this link, if you remember the report a problem feature, it takes you right to that map. Yeah, great.
One of the fun things here, I'm over Hall Boulevard, and you'll see it changes color. Hall Boulevard is a Beaverton road until it's not. As it crosses 217, it becomes an ODOT road. And then eventually it goes into the city of Tigard. So it's the jurisdiction is not only by street, it's which portion of which street. So it can be complicated, and so this map can be really very helpful.
Good point. And also just
okay.
want to quickly point out, because I'm looking at it here, we also have private streets in the city of Beaverton. So just a quick shout out. So I would say those are often maintained by HOAs, or maybe not always, but typically. So private streets just not maintained by the city of Beaverton.
Okay, great. Okay, now we've thrown a lot at you guys.
Yeah.
I think when Kate and Anna and I met today, this will take us no time at all, but this has actually been fun to kind of share all this information with all of you. And we have that last slide. So any questions or anything you'd like to hear about more from us, because we're happy to come back. This was sort of our first, really meant to be sort of our first presentation to share this information with all of you. But if there's something more you want us to come back with, let us know. Any other questions? You've all been really helpful in using the chat. So
we were kind of hoping to provoke some questions by introducing some subject areas that might be new to folks. And I would just say, on my own behalf, that I'm more than happy to come back and to dive a little bit deeper into some of these issues. You can't cover it all in one night, so we were just aiming for some basic introductory information today.
Yeah, I think that was wonderful, Anna. Jean and Kate, very good information. I thought did that great overview, just kind of getting a sense of the different components that play into transportation here in the city. My thought would be just how can we participate or provide information to you in those different steps that are going on or within the Planning Commission? Are there ways that we can participate, or with projects that are going on for you to come and present to us to be able to give the cyclist perspective to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you'll recall when I introduced myself, I talked about the current planning part of my role and the long range planning part of my role. For current planning, the development process is really applying the rules in the development code and the engineering design manual to specific projects that are proposed. By the time something gets to that point, the job of the city staff and of Planning Commission is to apply the approval criteria in the development code. The development code has specific applications, specific permits that are required for doing specific things. There's a whole bunch of them. And each of those permit applications has approval criteria. And those criteria have to be met in order for a permit application to be approved and for the desired development to be completed. And that Oregon State policy framework becomes really important there because it actually governs how Beaverton and every other jurisdiction in the state is expected to process and review land use applications and how the decisions can be made. And the most important thing is that we have to follow the approval criteria in our code. If a proposal doesn't meet the approval criteria, then we can't approve it. If it does meet the approval criteria, we must approve it. So that sets the framework for that review of those proposals. The reason I get to that slightly specific technical comment is that that's an aspect of the development review process that is sometimes a little bit challenging for community members to fully understand. That once these proposals come to the point where they've asked for land use approval, it's too late to change the rules. Sometimes there's a proposal that people think is a good idea or think is a bad idea, and they may have very good reasons for holding those positions. But ultimately, the city is obligated legally to make a decision based on the approval criteria. So back to the question, how can the Bicycle Advisory Committee be involved in the development process? Well, those approval criteria include transportation questions. And one of the things that Kate helps with is she supports the current planning staff in evaluating whether a proposal meets the transportation related approval criteria. The city transportation engineer, Job Locascio, also opines on these, particularly when there are very technical questions and analysis that is part of these applications, which it often is. But on a basic way, the transportation rules of the city need to be followed by development. And there is room for concerns to be raised about transportation issues, including cyclist and bicycle access related issues around development proposals. But there are also some constraints, because at that point we need to apply the approval criteria, apply the rules that are already on the books. The other hat that I wear, and that Kate also wears, and that Jean wears, is creating those rules in the first place. The rules that are in place in the development code and in the engineering design manual are supposed to be implementing city policy, and the policies created in the comprehensive plan, in the transportation system plan, the active transportation plan, and that policy gets translated into rules, which are then applied directly to projects. So we also spend a fair amount of time creating those rules. And so, for example, there are some aspects of the active transportation plan that we're going to be translating into development code and into comprehensive plan provisions in the next year. Those are places where folks like you can provide helpful guidance and feedback about whether those big picture policies are being translated well into the rules that will be applied to development. And there's also, it's also helpful when policies are being updated to hear, and again, as Kate said, this particular group did provide a lot of feedback as the active transportation plan was being developed. So that policy document of the active transportation plan, high level aspirational document, it has some specifics, but it's not in and of itself a rule. That gets then translated into the rules in the development code and the engineering design manual, and those then are applied directly to projects. And so there is a way for you folks to be involved at every layer of the process, but the way that you're involved and the influence you can have will vary depending on whether it's that high level policy document, whether it's creating the rules, or whether it's providing comments on a specific development application. So that's starting to open up the can of worms a little bit. And that's part of why we said maybe we might have to come back and talk a future night about some of that in more detail. There can be a lot to unpack.
Okay, that's wonderful. Anybody else have feedback, questions? Let's get that and then we'll continue on.
One sort of element of transportation land use planning that I'm always very interested in is the sort of climate angle. And I know Beaverton has been trying to sort of flesh out its approach to mitigating climate change. Could you talk a little bit about how that has sort of been folded into your work and how that has been changing recently?
Sure. So the city adopted a climate action plan in the, what it was about a year ago, Jean, is that right? And it has a lot of implementation steps. However, in spite of having a lot of implementation steps, it doesn't necessarily spell out exactly what we need to do in order to implement that plan. Some of the implementation items are still pretty, okay, overall it's an aspirational plan and the implementation still has to kind of be figured out. So that's actually something that is on our list for staff in the community development department to do some continued evaluation of. For example, one of the aspects of the climate action plan that affects the work of planning division is related to housing and making sure that that the housing that's created can be built in a way that makes efficient use of land and efficient use of other resources to avoid sprawl and to ensure that we can have functional mixed use neighborhoods that minimize the need for people to travel around a lot and burn fossil fuels in order to get their needs met. So sometimes there's a bit of an indirect route to implementing the climate action plan, where something like a rule about how many housing units you can build actually can translate into implementation of the climate action plan. And so it really touches a whole variety of things that we're doing. But I think that there are still some open questions about all of the things that we'll need to do in order to implement that plan, and ways that the plan itself might need to be tweaked or deepened or further developed in some ways.
Nadia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I thought I would just add, just to give you some color from a council legislative priority perspective. So, you know, we serve at city council, but there's also state and federal legislative priorities that are prioritized. Kind of by city council, but has been tricky because we're in this new form of government. So some of that was decided in November, December. However, when our state lobbyists met with us and talked with us about what some of our priorities showed specifically in the state, we saw a lot of elements of the climate action plan in the legislative priorities. So we have our lobbyists, we're doing some big lobbying down in Salem. And so there is some elements of the climate action plan that we think we can take to the state level, that not all, because there's too many, right? And so there is some of that advocacy that's happening. So just kind of as you're thinking about policy and big picture, like some of the climate action plan elements were being lobbied for by the city on behalf of all of us in Beaverton. And you know, there could be some, and if you don't know, there are some pretty great, I don't know them at all, because there are 2,100 bills, in case you're wondering, that are being that are actively sort of in conversation in the state, and to track 2,100 bills is like, you know, crazy business. But there are several bills that City of Beaverton specifically is focused on or advocating for specifically around climate action. You as you know, constituents of Beaverton and Oregon can learn about any bill that you would like to learn about and advocate for stuff around climate action if you're super passionate about it. There's probably a bill right now, and so just wanted to add that color that while the climate action plan is a plan that we adopted here in Beaverton, I know that there is some advocacy being done at the state level as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I think it's been a great conversation, and just to keep us on our schedule here a little bit, why don't we plan, Jean, maybe a couple months down the road, we can sort of go into Transportation 105 or
201. I think 201.
Okay, we're
I think we just go to second year, right? Yeah. You guys, I think you guys passed the test. I think you all passed the test. Yes, phew.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I guess our next topic, Amanda, did you want to take the reins here, going back over Westside Trail Bridge?
Yeah, so you may recall last meeting that there was a discussion presented to us about the Westside Bridge going over 26, connecting the north and south parts of the trail. We talked about things like how the bridge might curve, different designs for the walls, possible inclines. Our meeting minutes from our last meeting actually did an incredible job summarizing a lot of the topics that were brought up for discussion. And so we wanted to introduce the idea this meeting that maybe it would be worth it for the Bicycle Advisory Committee to write up a little letter of support for the project. Maybe just mentioning, you know, we think the bridge is going to add a lot of value to alternate transportation in Beaverton. It doesn't, I don't think it has to be anything too specific. Not sure what Jean had in mind.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I think by the way, I have that presentation. If anybody wanted to look at those images again, I have it ready if we wanted to look at it. But I think as Mike and I talked, you know, you heard about a pretty major capital investment that the Parks District is planning. We heard about a couple of alternatives, and they're continuing to get feedback from community members. They've been doing some online surveys. And, you know, an opportunity for you all is to weigh in on that sort of a project through, you know, I would say sort of more formal comment from you all as the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I don't know how often, I'm going to look at Mike, I don't know how often you, as the Bike Advisory Committee, have done this in the past, but it's an opportunity for you all to exert some influence and share your input and perspective on that project. So as Mint said, it can be a letter of support. It could be, we like this project and ... and maybe there's a list of feedback of things that you all agree on and want to share. And, you know, I think that's really for you all to discuss as a group. Mike, were you gonna chime in with something?
Yeah, I'd say it's been on a, I wouldn't say infrequent, but a fairly spaced out time frame as far as doing letters of recommendation or endorsement. And it's usually somebody that's come to us asking specifically for that letter. But I think being proactive on this. And if a few people wanted to get together offline and just kind of hash out, here are the things that we think might be good, or we can talk about it a little bit right now. What were the ideas that really jumped out at you? Was there one of the routes they were planning that really you felt was good, or one of the, as far as the design of the bridge, are there things that you really stood out or are priorities to us? Maybe we can highlight some of those, and then a few people can kind of work on that letter, and we could go over it next month and then submit it. So who wants to start? I recall there was like the routing of it. There was on the north side, there was one route that had like up to like a 7% grade, I think, and another one that was like around 4%. And I think that also impacted whether it was a straight bridge versus the S bridge. Right there. Yeah, that's where it's getting up closer to the 8%, which is 5. Anybody have any strong thoughts or opinions on the alignment? And
I still lean toward preferring a lower grade bridge just to increase accessibility to folks of a different ages and abilities.
I would agree. The flatter you can make it, particularly when we think of families and with smaller children. I always think when we're riding up to Hart on our little route that we do every year, and people are just walking up that little hill, just anything we can do to flatten it out is better. So I guess option 2 would be the one that I'm hearing we have a preference for. Maybe we do a little show of raised hands if that's what you like.
Yeah, I think the main negative for option 2 that they were talking about was cost, and also like when approaching the next road, like it wasn't as perpendicular. Is that what I remember? Okay, yeah. I still like that it's less steep though, because it is a lot easier for families and you know, accessibility for that. So I still like option 2.
Great feedback, Amy. Anybody else? Okay. Well, Mike and Amanda, what do you think? Do you have enough feedback to go on? Do you want to?
It's the only one I'd be curious what people think as far as the design of the actual bridge. Is there a preference as far as the aesthetics of the bridge?
Go to that slide. They had a couple of images, right?
I mean, especially if you're going with the curved one that's more expensive, I mean, it should be pretty. It should be kind of a focal point, and not just like the straight one example is just meh.
Utilitarian.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I'm fine with utilitarian if it gets me where I need to go. So, I mean, pretty is great.
Yeah.
I don't have super strong feelings personally.
I thought one of the things, just like when we look at like the art panels and things like that, it also is enclosing it a little bit, so it's making it more difficult or preventing acts where someone might be trying to throw something on the 26th or things of that nature, that you can make it safer both for the highway users and the people that are on the bridge, and make it also aesthetically pleasing.
I guess that's true. And also, like, if it doesn't feel like you're going over a busy, scary highway, then that's better.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like trying to encourage the integrated lighting, since especially who knows what'll happen with daylight savings, but if we ever hit a point where it's getting darker earlier, commuters are going to need to use that bridge under suboptimal lighting conditions, natural light conditions.
All right, well, that sounds like some good ideas and some good info. Now, does anybody want to volunteer to help in crafting the letter? Amanda, I don't know if you want to take the lead on it, or if anyone wants to kind of help with it. What would we like to do?
I can definitely help with proofreading, but I am doing implementation at work right now. So I'm setting up about 30 different agricultural trials all over the PNW for the next couple of weeks.
And it's planting season, yes.
Field season, yeah. Right now, hazelnuts and blueberries.
Okay.
I can help. Yeah, I can help.
Do you want to take the lead on writing it?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do that.
That would be wonderful. I appreciate you stepping up.
Sure.
And I'd be happy to take a stab at doing the first round of proofreads and possible ideas for edits.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
Great. So I'll follow up with the two of you and Mike as well.
Sure.
Anybody else that wants to chime in on the letter? Okay. I'll follow up and we'll get that going, and then bring it back next month for all of you to review and approve, and then we can get that sent off.
That would be
Sound
wonderful.
good? Okay. Fabulous. What's next? Oh, bylaws update. Okay, where are we at? 8:17. Okay. We have a little bit of time left, but I'll go, we can go quickly on this one. Mike, do you want to kick it off? Should I just
Well,
talk,
let me give my part, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's annually, is it there's the opportunity to review the bylaws for each committee and see if there are changes that need to be made. I'd say probably about 3 years ago or so, we did a fairly extensive look at the bylaws and made some changes to them. But one of the things that stood out, both Jean and I, is every year we have the experience of, we start off in January, we have all the new members, and we're supposed to vote and elect individuals when we just haven't even truly met, particularly in the pandemic. So the thought was whether that's something we want to look at as to changing the bylaws, that we have greater wiggle room as far as when we actually do that vote. And anything else to add, Jean, on that?
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, I mean, that is the one that stood out, that technically we're supposed to elect our officers in January, and now 2 years in a row we've not, which is fine. I reached out to the staff in our community services and engagement team, and it turns out we have a new template, and I'll share it here. We have a new template for bylaws that actually just describes the process as happening annually without naming a month. So that gives that flexibility. Everything else here, I'm going to read this. Yeah, everything else here is the same. So even the city has updated template to provide that flexibility for any of our boards and commissions. So I think from Mike and I, you're hearing like, and when I chatted with staff, they said, you probably should just go ahead and make that change, since that's sort of how you're already operating. The next opportunity to update the bylaws is not going to be for another 2 or 3 years. Okay. There's sort of a bit of intensive staff work from the community services and engagement team to do this. And they're doing it across, many of the boards and commissions. I think everything else, works pretty well for us of the current bylaws we have. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions, or if you want me to pull up our current bylaws, I'm happy to do that too. Any thoughts? And let me tell you all too, the timeline for all of this. Okay. And I actually can't see all of you. So if you're like, you need to just like shout out if you want to say something. Feel free to interrupt me. Okay, so here's our timeline from Francisca. So here we are in March. We are discussing proposed changes. And then we would then take those bylaws, take our existing bylaws into the template and send those to the Francisca when that's ready. And then from there, it goes through its internal process. It'll go to the city attorney's office. They'll review those bylaws. We're making a very simple change. There shouldn't be any issue. And then all of those changes go to city council for approval in May and June. So that's the timeline for all of this. Any questions, thoughts, thumbs up? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Let's do a straw poll with thumbs. Folks good with that? Okay. Okay, I have 2 from Michael. Okay, great. Okay, I will continue to proceed ahead, and I'll keep you updated as this works its way through the system. So simple change, but I think one that will make our lives a lot easier in January when we won't have to elect officers. Okay, great.
Let's see.
Let me go. What was the next on our agenda?
We've got City of Beaverton updates, and then any member comments and announcements.
Okay, great. Yeah, our last few minutes. So let's see. I had emailed. Let me find my notes. I had emailed all of you. I guess it was just last week. Update from City of Beaverton. So for March, I had shared with all of you that Mayor Lacey Beatty was delivering her State of the City address that focused on recent accomplishments and upcoming plans. If you have not yet watched it, it is available online on the city's website. It's a YouTube video that you can just click and watch on your own time. It's about a half an hour. And it's Mayor Beatty speaking, but there's also other members of the community that are also featured in it. So I highly recommend watching it. Let's see, I don't think we talked about earlier the May special election that's going to be happening May 18th, and that will fill the vacant City Council position 1. That's a position that's elected at large, and it's to fill a partial term that expires on December 31st, 2022. Filing deadline for candidates ends next week, March 18th at 5 p.m. And if you want to learn more, if you go to beavertonoregon.gov/elections, you'll find out about that. Another thing that's currently happening, our new Public Safety Center, which is at the intersection of Hall and Allen Boulevards. The community is invited to submit their naming suggestions for the recently completed outdoor public plaza that's in front of the Public Safety Center. Deadline for submissions is Wednesday, March 31st. To submit your suggestions, go to beavertonoregon.gov/TSC Plaza, or you can call 503-526-2543. So there's guidelines on our website about what's eligible for naming. There's a committee of volunteers that's going to review all of those submissions, and then they'll make a selection of 3 to 5 names for the City Council to consider in June. And then we're planning an unveiling in August to celebrate the name selection and the public art sculptures that have been installed in the plaza. I think we heard earlier about the city manager recruitment. Get your applications in. And then I also shared some information with you on vaccination information for Washington County residents. The county's webpage has a lot of information on there. And then Oregonians can also use 211 services by phone to learn more about vaccines and eligibility. So something we're all probably hearing a lot about and eager to help us get through COVID times. So just a couple other things too that I wanted to share with you. I think I also emailed you some updates from Beaverton School District. There was a event just last night, a community conversation on race. I participated in the group that the Safe Routes to Schools program offered. I'm just flipping through to look for my notes. It was a small group that participated, but we had a really interesting discussion. It was focused on what are barriers for walking and rolling, as we like to say, which is biking or skateboarding, or even for kids who ride the bus to school, and really wanting to find out if there are any barriers specific to race. So, you know, we heard both about sort of sidewalk infrastructure needs that can be a barrier, but even concerns from parents about their children being profiled while they're walking in the neighborhood, when they're just walking back and forth to school. And then even just hearing concerns about the options that kids have to get to school, and how bullying that may happen in schools. Sometimes that also happens off-site, whether it be on the way to school or on the school bus, that sort of thing. So a really interesting conversation. I was glad to be able to participate. I was really glad to be able to see the school district offer that. And there's a few videos that some of the high school students in Beaverton created in advance of the event, and I'll send you all the link so you can watch some of those. Really, it was a really well-produced event, and I was really impressed by the student work. So I see that Nadia has her hand raised. Were you gonna say something?
Oh, it was an amazing event. I actually got to speak. I presented at it last year. I did one on working with Muslim communities. If you ever want to learn about how to work with Muslim communities, I'm happy to talk with you. And the student video portion, I actually just shared it with counselors because it was really powerful. So definitely check it out if you've got some time.
Great, thanks. Okay, I'll stop there. We have a few minutes left for any of you to chime in with other things going on. Comments, announcements?
Anybody have anything to share for the good of the order? Comments or announcements, anything that's been going on, or you're participating in rides, anything of that nature?
March 21, we have another work party on the Seminary Trail. We're gonna go out to Cochrane Pond, which is 7 miles west of Timber, and we're gonna work our way back to the east to the old Tillamook Railroad trestle, which is spectacular. It's quite beautiful and quite high. And if you'd like to join a work party and get your hands dirty, please give me a call.
Okay, thanks, John.
Great. And I just put the link to the Salmonberry Trail website in the chat. So if you haven't visited the website, check it out. You can learn more about this amazing trail to connect the west side all the way out to the coast on an old rail line. Great.
Great. Well, that just brings us right to 8:29. So we have an on-time arrival for our March meeting. Thank you again, everybody, for participating in all your great questions and supporting the city and being a part of this. And anything comes up during the month, please shoot Jean or I or Amanda a note. And as we work on the agenda, if there are ideas that are coming up for you, things you'd like to see us touching on, please let us know and we can build that in as we look forward going into spring and summer. Everyone have a great rest of the month, and we will see you in April. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.